All right, let's get right into it. Our next speaker is Yasir Ahmed Qureshi from Kantar, sharing on consumer demand on sustainable plastic. Kantar works with organizations across the spectrum of sustainability challenges in order to meaningfully define and powerfully activate sustainability strategy. Environmental and social challenges dominate the news, and consumer and employee activism are the new normal. In response, the financial community is demanding action to de-risk business models. These changing values and expectations create risk for both private and public organizations. Yasir has over 17 years of research experience, partnered with some of the best brands in FMCGs and other sectors. Yasir is a core team member of APAC Sustainable Transformation Practice and brings a unique blend of expertise and point of view from Kantar's global network. The stage is yours, Yasir.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity. And thanks for all the nice sharing before me. Some very interesting insights. So what we're going to do now, we have looked at how sustainability is important, and we have looked at why sustainability is a must. Now, what we will do, which I think is probably one of the most important steps in the sustainable transformation journey, is to actually put consumer at the heart of sustainability. It's the most easiest thing to say, but most difficult thing to do. And we'll talk about it in the next few slides. So before I do that, let me just quickly introduce myself. I am Yasir Qureshi. I look after the insights division within Kantar. I'm one of the client partners here. I'm also one of the founding members of Kantar APAC Sustainability Council. A very quick understanding of Kantar. I think you probably are aware of us, but we are a human understanding company. We understand people and we inspire growth. And we have about 90 million conversations last year, where we spoke to consumers to understand about their pain points, their motivators, and we were able to bring about 2 million human insights. So we do a lot of work on brand, innovation, shopper work, activating e-commerce, and sustainability is one of a key domain across the board. So whether it is branding, whether it is strategy, whether it is innovation, sustainability is one of the main pillars that we have. And we do a lot of work with the different clients, whether it is FMCG, whether it is non-FMCG. We have a lot of different clients across different sectors where we have been partnering with them on their sustainable transformation journey. So before we go into some hard facts from consumers, let's understand what kind of business questions are there, which are important and critical for us to answer. So starting from probably the most important one is, where do I start? So I need to know, what are the consumer tensions? What are the consumer tensions and priorities, which are important for us to understand before starting the journey on sustainability? Then, once we've understood that, and that is where most brands got it wrong. So you understand the priority, what consumer tensions are, but at the same time, what we need to understand is, how can I integrate those sustainable transformation stories in my brand DNA? And that is where we unlock the magic, because this is important for consumer, this is aligned to the purpose of my brand, and then it makes a more holistic story. Beyond this, I think the other important aspect which we need to consider as manufacturers or as the key stakeholders is to understand that value equation gap. So what happens? Consumers say that they want to buy sustainable brands or they want to buy sustainable solutions, but eventually what we see, they don't buy that. So what are the value equation gaps that we need to consider to ensure that people buy us or buy sustainable brands? And then finally, how do we innovate? And we know innovation itself is a difficult process. If we put 5 innovations in the market, only 1 succeed. And sustainability itself is a broad topic, and to understand how can we make our innovation successful is something even more important and critical. Let's start with some consumer facts. I think we hear a lot from our clients that after this COVID-19, the new normal, do the fundamental values of sustainability are still there or not? So very interestingly, the values have been reinforced. So what has happened before COVID? I mean, there were 30% people, for example, in UK who prefer products or services that are having a positive impact on the environment. Whereas after COVID, that percentage actually jumped from 30 to around 50%. So definitely the fundamental values are pretty much reinforced after COVID-19. We also see that consumers generally blame large companies and corporations, and they have the most negative impact on environment problem based on consumers. And they also want the big companies and also the government to take some smart and quick steps. And I think we've already talked about it, but just a very quick context based on what we have seen. It's not just doing the right thing. Yes, it is about doing the right thing, and that is an important reason why we are all here. But it also, gives a $12 trillion opportunity. So it's quite huge. I mean, it's something which is definitely for us to notice and to work upon it. And there are certain brands, for example, like Unilever, which is one of our longest partner in the sustainable transformation journey. We have been working with them, I think, at the start of 2004, and it's all close to 1.5 year decade that we've been working with them. And we can see that after all these efforts which they have done, 60% of their growth, Unilever growth, is coming from their sustainable living brands. And these brands are growing 50% faster than the rest of the business. So definitely some brands have already started getting those commercial benefits. And it's not something that you can start from tomorrow. They have been doing this for a very long time, and now they're reaping those benefits. I also talked about value equation gap. I also talked about consumers who say that they want to buy sustainable brands, but they don't buy. And how do we know that? Because we also have a panel of consumers. So whatever they say, we can record this. This is more like an attitude. But whatever they buy, they put all the packagings, the empty bottles or empty packaging in a bin which we provide. So we collect on a monthly basis that bin, and we see the product that they have actually used. And can you guess how many people are actually using sustainable brands? So 92% are saying that we want to use sustainable brand, but only 16% people are actually using sustainable brands. So they actually have the change in the behavior. And this is basically a foundational study that we have done in UK. So this is a study done in a Western market, which is perceived to be more sustainable than the Asian markets. And that is where there is a high value action gap. What we're going to answer today is, how do we close the value action gap? How do we make sure that consumers do what they are saying they want to do? And how can we reduce those barriers? The first thing, as I said earlier also, is to identify the tensions so that we can know exactly where to play. And there is a big discussion on where to play and how do we go about it. And I'll talk about it in the next couple of slides. But once we have understood where to play, then it's about how do I integrate that story into my brand? Because if it is not resonating with your brand purpose or your brand vision, it will not be seen authentic. And if it is not seen authentic, people will not pay for it. Forget about premium, they will not even go for that particular proposition. So it has to have something which is concerning our existing consumers. So what is that particular thing which is bothering them? How do I build that into the DNA of my brand to have an impact? And then once I have built this strategy, once I've done the homework, then how do I execute that? And that again, we have to put consumers at the heart of our innovation process, and also sustainability at the heart of our innovation process. Once we have done this, then we close the value action gap. And beyond that, I think what we are seeing, companies do focus more on the customer, but at the same time, it's a culture. How do we build that culture within the organization? And that's another important aspect. And I'll talk about one big example where the company was client-centric, but forgot to talk about or forgot to communicate properly to their employees, and that backfired. And of course, we need to measure our efforts. So we need to have a strong KPI and relevant KPI for us to track our performance. So just to give you a bit of an idea, there is a framework that we use. We start from where to play, which I think is a core, and then of course purposeful impact in terms of our brand, sustainable innovation, looking at employee inspiration. How do we inspire employees? How do we inspire consumers for the change? And then finally measure and learn what we have already put in the market. So this is what we use as a framework when we are looking at the transformation of our clients to the sustainable journey. Let's start with where to play. And as I said, the first step, not the most easiest one, but understanding which purpose issues are important to focus for your industry is critical. And I keep saying your industry because we have seen that in certain industries, there are issues which are more stronger or more resonating with consumers, but for the other industry, it could be completely different. And in different markets also, we have seen that there could be issues where you might not find a similar theme across multiple markets. So it's not an easy one to execute, especially for a regional marketing person and a global marketing person, because you have to understand the context of each market and then contextualize your stories according to the nuances that you know in that market. And it's not easy, as I said, because it is quite commercially difficult to build stories for different regions, and we can understand some broad themes. But overall, we still need to understand what are those broad themes which we can execute, let's say, in a cluster of markets. But it has to be anchored around consumer attention, which can be different, as I said, in different regions and different markets, and we need to understand it in a lot more detail. Let me just quickly look at one of the big study that we are doing from our global team, and this is basically, we call it Who Cares and Who Does. If you look at it globally, the top 5 issue, plastic is coming out to be the #1 issue, and it's also growing. And that study was done in 2019, so it's still quite relevant. And if you look at Indonesia, for example, one of the Southeast Asia market, plastic is important, and so is slightly different when it comes to, let's say, Latin America. So plastic or related to all these kind of things are important in most markets, but we also need to consider, for example, in China, where plastic is top 3, but at the same time, their nuances is slightly different. They're looking for food safety as well, because we know Chinese consumer have deep-rooted concerns about the food supply. So for them, the most important purpose is about how can you ensure that there is transparency in my food supply, and you're taking care of all those things which I'm worried about. So that's important for us to understand, and hence it is critical to understand at a more granular level, by market, what is their concerns. And we have seen, for example, we have done this work in Australia, and within Australian market, as I said earlier, different segments, different industry have different challenges. For example, a fast food industry is completely different when it comes to, let's say, a personal, let's say, for example, an alcohol beverages company. So the relevant issues are slightly different. Plastic is coming out, or should I say, over-packaging is coming out to be a common denominator across most industries. But having said that, those nuances are important and very critical for us to understand on an industrial level. So the way we do this, we have a framework which we say to win or to survive a battle, what you need to do, you need to have a shield, because that shield is important for you to defend yourself. Without the shield, you don't have the right to be in the battle, right? But you cannot win a battle with a shield. You need a sword as well. So we have this analogy, the shield and the sword analogy. What we say is these are must-haves. These are important to the category. But if you don't have them, you will not be able to authentically talk about sustainability. Your stories will be, will not be considered authentic by consumers. They will not, listen to you. You will not be able to execute the higher order purpose that you want to build in your brand. And the key motivators, as I said, these are the higher order purpose. So something which is concerning the consumers, or something that can be resonated with consumers and with your brand. And that is where these sword will help you win the battle at the shelf with your competitor and through your shoppers. And then there are certain things which we call as hidden gems. And these are also important for us to keep an eye on, because we know sustainable transformation journey requires a lot of time. It takes some time. It can take a couple of years and more than that, because there are big investments and we need to bring all the stakeholders to one specific direction. And this requires, a lot of time and effort. So to understand something which probably is going to become important in the next 3 to 4 years is really critical and can actually give you a competitive advantage over, your competition or over the other industries also. Let's look at some of the work that we have done in other markets. Packaging is coming out to be a hygiene factor. So this is my shield. If I don't show good packaging solutions which are helping the environment, my stories are not authentic. I'm not perceived a person who is authentic. And if I am talking about high order benefits, nobody will believe those. So packaging definitely is an important step, because that gives you the right to play in the realms of sustainability. But packaging alone is not enough. We need to think about a higher order benefit which we can provide to our consumer. For example, it could be waste reduction. It could be transparency in your supply chain. So this is basically your sword. So you have packaging. Nobody can, you can defend yourself, but you need to have a sword to win that battle. And when I talk about future sword or future hidden gems, it could be something that we can explore for the next 5 years. So it could be, for example, ethical supply chain or biodiversity, which is coming out from our global work in one of the markets. So now that we've understood, and as I said, it's one of the most important steps and sometimes not done properly, is about understanding the consumer attention, what are the things that are important issues for them. Once we've aligned on those, then the next step is to build the brand purpose or build those issues into your brand DNA. And that is where most of the time we spend a lot of energy and efforts, because it's not easy to do. Because if you know one particular purpose, you need to think about your brand, what your brand can authentically claim, and then talk about it. So I'll show you some very interesting results. So we do ad testing of our clients, and we have a massive database of 20,000 ads that we have tested. And out of those 20,000 ads, 600 ads had a purpose, which we have tested. So out of those 600 ads where the purpose fits the brand, you can see they seem more credible versus the ad with weak brand fit. You can see that the score is quite low. So you are seeing credible when the issue that you are trying to talk about is connecting with your brand, which makes people enjoy your copies, enjoy your ads, which make people think about buying you, and which ultimately contribute to your equity, which we call brand power contribution, which basically means the market share that you can command. So credibility only comes when your purpose fits your brand, which translate into enjoyment, which translate into persuasion, and which translate into brand power. So that's how important it is for us to get it right. And we have a lot of examples. For example, Coke, I think, did a fantastic work. There were some concerns about the production where, of course, there is water usage when you are looking into any beverages. So there was concerns raised by some community regarding water wastage. And Coke answered it fantastically. They said, for every drop we use, we give one back. And what Coke did, they acquired, they invested heavily in wastewater treatment plants. And they showed the community how they're giving it back to the community. Whatever I use, I'm actually giving it back. So amazing work, and did a lot of build a lot of traction among the different stakeholders. And we have Nord, again, nicely fitting the story. We buy Nord because of flavor, right? That's the main purpose of the brand, and how nicely they fit the story, flavor that feels good. And then they talk about sustainably grown for Nord. So they talk about the value chain, the purity in the value chain, and hence the flavor that feels good for you. So amazing story. And of course, they're reaping commercial benefits out of it as well. And then we have something which is a non-FMCG client, and Amazon. They have their ambitious target. Their CEO came in and talked about what they want to do in 2040. And they actually connected very well with what customers are looking for. Of course, attention is when I'm when I'm actually buying from Amazon, I get the packaging, but that packaging is whether recyclable or not recyclable. So they worked with the key players like P&G and other big players, and they try to reduce the packaging needed. They try to look for solutions, and it was very well done, no doubt about that. However, while they were too focused on customer, they were not able to execute that well within the organization. And during the COVID-19, some of the safety measures were not properly adhered by Amazon, and it backfired. So that's where this journey is not an easy one. You have to bring everybody together and bring them onto the same page. At the same time, you don't go with something which your own employees are not feeling comfortable with, and it can backfire. And the impact was that the vice president of the Amazon has to resign after this backlash. So really important. And as I said, I mean, when we're looking for this journey, it's not an easy one, but there are $12 trillion which are available for the grab also if you're looking at the commercial benefits. but as a contributing to the society anyway, this is something that we want to do. But very important that we get it right and we take every step, should be a measured step, so that there is no backlash like what we have seen for Amazon case, which was doing fantastically well, but something didn't do well, and internally they got into a little bit of a trouble. Now let's go back to probably one of the most interesting and most exciting and most difficult one is how do we innovate products? And again, the fundamentals, whether you are innovating products which are non-sustainable, let's say a normal innovation, or let's say a sustainable innovation, the principle remains the same. We are looking for a consumer tension. And when we have a consumer tension, something which they are not able to, which is not being fulfilled by the existing products in the market, that is where we can unlock the magic. And then once we've understood those tensions, that's not enough. We need to build and execute those stories in such a way that our key underlying tension is seen to be resolved by our solution. Because if the consumer will not get your story, if they will not get the value equation, they will not buy it. So regardless how good the consumer tension was, we need to execute in a smart way. Let me talk about some examples to give you an idea why these two things are important. So one of the brands in UK, which is a detergent brand, they came up with an amazing idea, which is concentrated liquid detergents. So instead of buying 3 large bulky pack of detergent, you just have to buy 1 bottle, for example. And of course, that's easy for consumers. It's also good for the planet because you don't have to spend more water or other resources generating this product. Packaging is also reduced. So overall, it's a fantastic idea. And it was actually based on consumer tension as well. But unfortunately, it was not executed well. And what happened? Consumer started to overdose the product. They did not understand the product. And actually that broke the value chain. So a very good, fantastic idea, unfortunately, was not able to materialize or was not seen what the value equation was from consumers because it was not properly communicated, I guess. We have another example, and I think this is something which is very close to us also. When we go and buy the let's say our burgers or anything to do with foods and beverages, we're now being given that in a paper bag. And we know paper bags are fragile, sometimes they burst. So it's not the most consumer-friendly solution to the problem. And it's a huge opportunity for us to look for how can we fill that consumer tension. Yes, I want to buy a brand that will give me a packaging that is good for the environment. But if I'm like carrying it to home and my meal get spoiled, then I will not buy it. So these are the things that we need to understand that's contributing to those value action gap that we talked about. So 92% were saying, I want to buy sustainable brands, but only 19 or 16% are buying that. So these are some of the tensions which we are not able to resolve. And we need to see how we can actually do that. And I think just a quick idea on how we do this. We identify the fuels and friction. And it's a very comprehensive framework. What we're looking for is the left-hand side of the brain, the right-hand side of the brain. We try to understand what consumers can immediately understand. So what my brain can process, fast brain, if you're aware of how the consumer, or just to say a normal person thinks, they're looking for both the fast brain and the slow brain. So the slow brain takes time to process information. So we try to understand what tension are easily resolved, or what solution are coming from their fast brain, and what are coming from their slow brain. And that's like such an important aspect to understand, because that will help us understand how do we make it easy for my consumers to understand my solution. So all this comes with extensive work, understanding consumer tension. What is driving that consumer tension? Is it a slow brain problem which we need to resolve, or is it something which is coming from their fast brain? And how do we actually action this? Secondly, I think whether we're looking at attention, but we need to understand our target audience as well. And as I said, target audience are different across different markets. If you're looking at Southeast Asia, a Malaysian consumer is completely different versus, let's say, a Thai consumer or a Vietnamese consumers or an Indonesian consumer. So we need to understand how many people are actives, which are really looking for sustainable solution, how many people are just believer or considerers, because you have to manifest those stories differently for your different segments. And once we have done this, then we can generate those sustainable ideas, and that's the first step. But once we have done this is not enough, because then we need to, take it to the consumers and test these ideas. And as I just talked about, there are so many examples where the executions were not done properly, though the insights were fantastic. I think this is really important for us to relook at how the consumer will think about our proposition. Is the manifestation that we have done for their problem, is it something that which is resonating with them or not? Are they able to understand it or not? And I mean, we have solutions now which can, fast track this. You don't have to wait for months to get your result. You can get it into 72 hours, sometimes, within 24 hours, or also depending upon how easy or how difficult the target market you are trying to reach to. But all of this is now online. Some of this is, can give you an idea in terms of best ideas, optimizing concepts, which is slightly more refined, whether you're looking for a packaging solution. So all these can be tested, in the space of now 72 hours or less. And I think if I can just summarize what we just discussed, I think clearly, this is the right thing to do, because we know this is something that we need to do now to survive. But at the same time, sustainability actually gives us huge commercial benefit. We're talking about 12 trillions, which is like huge. And we've already seen some brands taking advantage of the work that they've been doing for the last 1 decade or 1.5 decades. We also feel that to really understand where to play, you need to have the analogy of sword and shield. So packaging is important, because without packaging, you will not be able to execute your stories. People will not see you as an authentic brand in the realms of sustainability. However, packaging is more like a hygiene factor. It is not going to give you, or it's not going to unlock the magic which you're looking for via building the brand purpose and going with that brand purpose moving forward. So you need to understand both what is my what is the shield that I need to have, and you also need to understand what are the swords that we need to take forward and then win the battles. And understanding issues are important, but integrating those into your brand DNA, into the fabric of your brand, is the most important step. And that is where we see few clients have got it wrong, and there was a backlash. So it's something really important and critical for us to develop stories that are authentically, or that can be authentically claimed by our brands, because we've seen that credibility, can go down if your brand purpose and the purpose that you want to, align is not fitting with each other. So your brand vision and the purpose that you want to align needs to fit together, need to merge together to holistically build a story. And finally, value action gap. We need to have an extended understanding of what are my consumer tensions and how do I unlock those tensions to really, make my innovation successful in the market. Because without understanding the consumer tension and without executing the value proposition, we will not be able to execute our innovation in the markets. So that's the quick sharing that I wanted to do today. And please feel free to connect if any questions. We are more than happy to do one-to-one separate sessions with you if you want to further discuss and consider how we can help in terms of your category or within your brands. We are very passionate about this subject. Of course, there are commercial benefits, but I think beyond commercial benefit, I think we are passionate about this work. We're actually doing a sustainable foundational study, which is done in the APAC region, and the webinar is happening on 14 July. So you're all invited. The organizers very kindly have agreed to share the links with you as well. So please feel free to join us, and we're more than happy to even have one-to-one sessions with you if there is anything where you feel we can help. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for your sharing earlier. Definitely agree with you on what you mentioned. Sorry, what you mentioned about sustainability is not just a trend, and it's the right thing to do, and it's also brings in business as well. So we're looking through like the different questions that we have, and I think the first question that I would like to ask is like how can brands create that balance in terms of creating a sustainable brand, putting their value proposition towards sustainability out there without greenwashing? How could they achieve that balance in terms of sending out that message?
Yeah. So, sorry, without what?
To send out that message without greenwashing. Yeah.
Oh. The first thing is that for a brand to come into this journey of sustainability, I think they need to be fully committed. Because if you are not fully committed, consumers can actually, pick this up, and this can backfire. So first and the most important thing is to actually have the commitment across the board from the senior management. So everybody is aligned that we are going to go into this sustainable transformation journey, which is not an easy journey. I think we've seen a lot of examples where a brand tried to do something good, but it was not seen good, and that actually backfired. So all in all, the first and most important thing is to have 100% commitment towards this, and then proceed on that one. Secondly, I think the consumers are very smart. If they don't see the story authentic, they will eventually understand that this is something which is more like a PR campaign. It's not something genuinely done by the manufacturer or by whichever brand that we are talking about. So these are the two most important things. Definitely we need to sound authentic. B, we need 100% commitment. And then choose your battle. What actually can we do versus what is needed for my brand. So you can't go with something which is a very big claim which you can't authentically resolve. So go with something which is closer to your brand and closer to your overall manufacturing processes that you are doing, and you can show that you have bring that change. And it's not about brainwashing. I think consumers are getting more and more acquainted with the subject as we speak. 3 years ago, the subject probably was not as important, and most importantly, it's an evolving subject. So what I think is important for me now may not be true for the next 2 or 3 years. So I don't think it's about brainwashing the consumers. It's not about going into a situation whereby we're not sure about how we'll be seen. Whatever we want to talk about authentically, which we can actually claim later on that, okay, this is a brand that I'm a brand with the same values, and I'm resolving this particular tension. People will authentically understand and will resonate with what your efforts are.
Okay. Yeah, I think definitely in terms of like the consumer side, they are getting smarter, they are getting more aware as well. Would you have like of consumers towards what is their understanding towards like plastic and recycling? Because a lot of the brands out there, they have a goal towards recycled packaging and plastics used in their packaging. So do you think that packaging needs to have clearer labels? Does it need to be more apparent? Do they need more instructions in terms of recycling as well? Yeah, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a very important and interesting question. We hear this question a lot from our clients. The first thing is that the understanding of different solution of packaging, for example, recyclable packaging, biodegradable packaging, it is at different level at different markets. So, for example, in Southeast Asia market, different markets are at different level of awareness on what people actually understand by biodegradable packaging versus, let's say, the Western markets and the markets where we are in right now. So, not all markets are the same level, but what we have seen, there's a lot of confusion. So, recyclable packaging is what people consider, something that they can understand is recycled. But what is biodegradable packaging? Sometimes people are quite confused, and they see pretty much, and they use these terms pretty much interchangeably. So there is an education needed also. So if we are anchoring our story on just packaging, that story needs to also educate consumers what is this particular packaging about and how this can actually help the environment. And as I said in the session just now, it's basically more or less your shield. So if you have this packaging solution that you're talking about, it provides you the shield. So it provides you that opportunity for you to then start talking about those stories which build the purpose in the brand. So it's important to have this shield, and you can go with the whichever packaging solution works in your industry. And you have to communicate the advantages of that packaging, and that, for example, is biodegradable packaging. So why it is important for the environment, you have to explain. but that is also not enough. It's basically something which is more like a shield, but you need a sword to win the battle. And that sword is basically your brand purpose. But without the shield, you don't stand a chance to win the battle. So that's how it is.
Yes. Before we go into the battle, earlier you mentioned as well, like the where to play, right? And there is one question that is asking, just to clarify, does that mean to identify the sustainability acceptance level of the customers? And is there an online method or offline method which is effective to get the statistics that is needed?
Yeah, fair question. I think when it comes to where to play, so where to play is more about understanding what are the tension in the mind of consumers these days. What are the issues which they think about when they heard subject like sustainability or environment or anything to do with that. So we're trying to understand what are those important tensions in the mind, in the life of the consumers. And it could be, and we have seen this, in different markets, somewhere, environmental issues are really high order, issues where people are really talking about this. In certain markets, it's all about the basic issues. It's about helping the underprivileged. In certain markets, it's about, plastics, the whole discussion about the plastics. So different markets are at different continuum, and different market has a different, way of processing the information and the way of processing, what's happening around them and the issues which they are involved in. So we need to understand. That is the reason why the first step is to understand where do your consumers stand. And as I said earlier as well, even for different categories and different manufacturers will have different, tensions to resolve, because consumer associate different tensions with different manufacturers. Now, how do I understand those, where to play or those tensions? It can be done through online, research. Why we speak to the online panelists. It can be done with a mix of both online and offline, because in certain markets the penetration of online, is not that good. But whether it is online, whether it is offline, the way we ask the questions is pretty much the same. It depends upon which market you're talking about. For example, in Malaysia, no problem at all doing online. But in markets where the penetration of online is slightly low, then we go with a more like a hybrid approach, because we want to get the representative sample which represent the actual market.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you talk about the consumers in different markets, especially like in developing countries. So there's another question that is asking something along those lines as well. So in developing countries where sustainability always comes with a higher price, they could have like awareness of sustainability, but how can we like drive consumers' motivation to actually buy, to actually like execute as well?
Yeah, again, so I think it's more about markets, and people are probably more inclined to pay premium, right? Whereas probably in the developing markets, consumers may not be thinking about paying premium. Actually, this is partly true, because the values are less understood in certain markets, when I'm talking about developing markets. But what is the purpose? The purpose is basically to defend where we stand right now, and that's even more important than charging premium. So what if there is a brand that comes in and start talking about a purpose that resonates with the target group, the category users, people who are buying your brand? If that purpose resonates well with them, specifically we're talking about the new generation that is coming in, they're like more inclined towards sustainability subject than some of the older generation. That's a fact that we have to take into account. So if we don't do what is right now, because people will not pay the premium, can we take that risk of losing out the upcoming market, the consumer segment that will give us the revenue for the next 10-15 years? So I guess it's a fair point, but at the same time, I would say if the value equation is understood, people will pay premium also. But if you're charging something which people are not able to understand, people are not able to resonate well, then nothing will happen. Just like the concentrate detergent example that we were talking about, if you look at the overall value equation, it was actually cheaper to consumers. But since they didn't understand the value equation, they started overdosing, and they realized that, oh God, I'm finishing this in so quickly, so I will not buy this product which is like double the price of a normal product. So of course, value equation or explaining the value equation, the value proposition is really important and critical.
Yes, yeah, definitely agree on that. Yeah, very interesting conversations around the consumer demand and also more questions. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. So if you have any questions, drop it in the chat, and then Yasir will be there to answer any questions that you have. He also very kindly offered on the one-on-one consultation as well. So if you would like to do that, we have the link coming up during the